Life in Europe, stories from my life. Life in Europe, stories from my life. Hello, you all. I'm Diana Brienne. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit and tell you all a story from my life. You all know how I like to share little stories, true stories from my life, and I love to hear other people's stories as well. Well, my husband and I were moving to Europe, and it was an exciting time. We had just been to New England, and I caught a cold, but didn't know I had a cold until I got on the plane. And then I started to feel really not good. So the 14-hour trip was not the most comfortable trip for me. Once we were there, some friends picked us up in their car and took us to what is called a guest house, which is like a hotel. And we stayed there for a few weeks while we waited on finding an apartment. We didn't have our cars there yet. They were being shipped. And so our bicycles had been delivered. So my husband and I, we took our bicycles around the town that we had moved to, and it was such an exciting time. People would stare at us because, well, we looked kind of unusual, or at least I did. And, I looked so out of place being there. And it was just exciting and new, and we didn't know how to speak the language, so we would point like if we wanted to order something. We had no idea. And so it was just new and it was wonderful. Well, very shortly thereafter, we found an apartment, and the apartment had a landlady, and she was so neat. She didn't speak English, and I didn't speak her language, and we just really became very close through cooking, and she tried to teach me her language. Well, gradually through books and cassettes, because it was books and cassettes back then, I learned to speak the language and other languages as well, self-taught. And so, I just had a wonderful relationship with her. We lived on the second level. It was kind of a family home, and the son lived on the top level, and she and her husband lived on the bottom level, and we had a separate apartment. And I would bake pies and make homemade bread, and I would put it on the windowsill, to cool. And it was just such a fascinating, wonderful time. When my husband and I first got there, we both played Scrabble because, well, we didn't feel comfortable traveling at first. And so we played so many games of Scrabble on the weekend nights, and I beat my husband 19 games, and then he beat me 19 games. It was really fun. And we had this little black and white TV that only got a couple stations, and of course we didn't understand the language, but it was so cool and so neat. And so eventually we moved to another house. It was like a townhouse, a very nice one, for a short period of time. But then my husband got a better job out in Bavaria, and I stayed there because I had to finish up my job. Well, when my job was over, I turned over the keys to the landlord, and we didn't have cell phones back then, and I really didn't have a way to connect with my husband once I disconnected our phone. And so I took off in my little BMW convertible on a beautiful day, and I was traveling on the Autobahn, listening to Mick Jagger's Sweet Thing. And I got distracted, and I kept on driving, and I missed my exit. And I ended up at another border of another country, and it was towards evening. And I got really scared because I had no idea where I was at, what to do. And no one seemed to know where this little town was. And I was trying to remember it from the directions my husband had given me. So I learned a lot about maps and writing things down after that. So anyhow, my husband apparently had put out a police report for a missing woman, me. And so I continued to travel and get lost, and I would turn around and go this way and go that way. And it was getting later and later. So I pulled over to a truck stop, and I was just crying. And this really nice man came over, a truck driver, and he said, "Can I help you?" In his broken English, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm lost." And I told him where I was going, that no one else seemed to know where it was, because it was a tiny little village, and Heidi territory in Bavaria. And he said, yeah, I know where it is. My brother-in-law lived there. And so I ended up following this big semi over hill and over dell and everything else, and I just kept following him. I had to trust somebody to get me where I needed to go, and I think he was like an angel. Anyhow, we went over these farm fields and everything like that. And as I approached the little town and the street, because the town wasn't very big, I saw my husband at the end of the street with a group of men, and it turned out to be his friends. And, you know, they were all concerned about me, and they were going to go out looking for me. And the truck driver waved and he said, "Auf Wiedersehen." And I said, "Auf Wiedersehen." And away he went, and away I went, and into the arms of my husband. Well, we lived in Bavaria for a couple of years. It was beautiful and wonderful and magical. And we had cows and chickens and all of that. And so I just loved it. And we traveled so much. One time we traveled on a train in one of the Eastern Bloc countries, and I looked down, you know, as I went to go to the bathroom, tinkle, as we call it. And when I did, I looked down and everything went onto the train tracks. And then I understood why people didn't walk on the train tracks. And then the train caught on fire in the middle of the night in about 10 degrees below zero weather, and it was snowing. And apparently someone's cigarette caught it on fire. So we all had to get out of the train in the middle of nowhere. And that is a whole nother story. Another time we went to Italy, and we were down by the Colosseum, and we were sleeping in back of our truck, backed up near the Colosseum, and these bandits came over, and they were going to try to break into our truck with us in it. My husband was sound asleep, so I kept telling them, I kept acting like a crazy woman. Finally, they believed me, and they took off. And another time, I went to the supermarket on my bicycle with my basket, bought some bread and some other fresh vegetables and things like that. And I was trying to speak the language. Well, I had learned the language with cassettes and books and my landlady. And so I kept saying to the cashier, I wanted to tell her she looks busy. And instead I told her she was damaged. And I kept repeating it, "You are damaged, you are damaged." And at first she looked confused, and then she started laughing because she knew what I meant. And I just didn't pronounce the words right because they were kind of close in how you say them. And so I had so many amazing, wonderful experiences while in Europe, and I just loved it, got to travel, and I cherish those memories. I absolutely cherish those memories. And so another story from my life, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear your stories as well. From my house to yours, God bless you, and I hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.